You're listening to Confessions of a Bookkeeper, where we look at businesses through the eyes of their books. My name is Mark, your Chief Bookkeeping Officer, and I spent years cleaning up and reviewing some, let's say, interesting books. The setting is early September, the heart of corporate tax season. If you work with CPAs, you know exactly what this month feels like. The September 15th deadline looms large. Entity filings, extensions, the corporate returns are due, and the vast majority didn't file back in March. For most business owners, it's relatively quiet with their children heading back to school and they themselves finally be able to settle down back at work. But for CPAs, they're in the middle of controlling chaos. And here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. There simply aren't as many CPAs anymore, with interest in that license falling almost 40% over the last decade. Fewer accounting students are taking the CPA exam, fewer graduates are entering the profession, and many of the veterans who built their firms decades ago are now scaling back, retiring, or simply over capacity. And you can feel it in every conversation. Firms are saying no to new clients, longtime CPAs selling to private equity, wait lists stretching months or years, partners saying to those potential clients, "We'd love to help, but we just don't have the bandwidth." It's not neglect or anything like that, it's just our reality. There are fewer people doing more work than ever before. And when you combine that with the expectations of hundreds of clients, hundreds of deadlines, and thousands of pages of tax code that change every single year, you start to understand why so many CPAs are stretched thin. Now here's the catch. In many of these businesses, there is no active bookkeeping service that they offer. This means that clients don't necessarily have monthly reconciliations, regular P&L reviews, and no maintaining of financial visibility throughout the year. So when September rolls around, the CPA is handed, 12 months of history, not 12 months of data. And so they're not interpreting like results, they're building them. They're not doing advisory, they're doing construction of that. And it's not their fault. Most CPA engagements are purely tax return based. The client sends their numbers once a year, and the CPA's job is to file that return accurately, full stop. But here's where the misalignment happens. The business owner assumes their CPA keeps an eye on the books, while the CPA assumes the business owner has someone handling that bookkeeping. Tale as old as time. In between those assumptions is where the silence becomes deafening, because that silence is what I call our CPA ghost town. It's not a bad relationship, it's just an incomplete one. And that missing piece, the one that connects all of it, is consistent bookkeeping. Not sporadic bookkeeping, not once a year cleanup, real structured monthly bookkeeping. The kind that keeps businesses informed so the CPA and owner can do what they do best. Because when bookkeeping is done right, everything downstream gets easier. The CPA gets real data in a timely fashion, the business owner gets clarity instead of surprises, and nobody's blindsided by what shows up in September. But in this story, bookkeeping wasn't part of the picture just yet, and that's where the problem started. The client was an attorney, had his own S corporation, and had a great CPA. I actually know the guy personally. He's one of those really sharp, talented tax professionals who thrives in that complexity. The kind of CPA who's built his reputation on deep strategy within that field and with high stakes work for his successful clients. But like many good CPAs, his focus is strategy and execution. He's not necessarily running a bookkeeping department. Because when you're a CPA with a sophisticated client base, doctors, lawyers, your highest and best use isn't entering transactions. It's interpreting results, finding savings, and planning strategies. Bookkeeping just isn't the best use of that time. That doesn't mean he doesn't care about the books. It just means his engagement isn't built around maintaining them. And that's where this particular attorney found himself, in the space between these assumptions. His CPA did his taxes once a year. Everything got filed. No news, no problems, right? 2 years ago, his revenue was quite good, but his expenses were very high. He outsourced a lot of legal work at that time, hired a lot of temps, and made some big one-time purchases. The result? A low tax bill and a great year. So when the following year came around, he just assumed it would be the same story because it was the same amount of revenue, similar vendors as far as expenses go. So does that mean the same kind of outcome? Not this time. The expenses weren't there in the dollar amount as it was from the year before. He didn't need to hire additional help. He didn't have those one-time large purchases. His revenue stayed steady, but his profitability soared, and he didn't realize it. Not until September. Why? Because there was no bookkeeping. There was no month-to-month visibility, no profit and loss statement to compare, no hint that the picture had changed. So for 9 months, he was quite confident, thinking the silence meant stability. Then the deadline came around. He called his CPA to finalize his corporate return, just like every year before, and when the CPA sent back the results, he was floored. His tax liability had doubled. He thought it had to be wrong. He couldn't believe it. He needed to know if those numbers were real. Because what made the timing even worse, he was in the middle of a business acquisition. He was trying to buy into another small firm, and he needed financials for the bank, and he needed cash for a down payment. Now suddenly, he had a massive tax bill due in less than 2 weeks, right before he was supposed to close the deal. He called us. He said, I just need someone to look at this and tell me if these numbers make sense. And when we did, the numbers did make sense. His CPA's work was perfect. The numbers were very accurate. The problem wasn't the return. It was the year that came before it, just set maybe a bad precedence. With no one keeping the books, he'd gone 9 months without realizing that his tax position had completely changed year over year. And that's the danger of this CPA ghost town. It's not about errors. It's just about absence of information. The information was missing, and that missing information cost him clarity, timing, and peace of mind. If bookkeeping had been in place, he would have seen it coming. He would have known his profitability had jumped. He would have known to start planning, maybe invest in something for the business, maybe set funds aside for taxes, maybe structure the acquisition differently. Instead, everything hit at once. Tax bill, the stress, and the deal falling apart. And that's what happens when the system's missing such an important link. It's not that anyone failed their obligations, it's just that no one was filling the roles that needed to be filled. Bookkeeping would have changed everything, not just for his business, but for his personal life too, because when you're a solo professional, a lawyer, a doctor, any business owner really, all your finances are in really one ecosystem. When one part shakes, the other feels it instantly. That's the kind of the idea of these pass-through entities, which is why I always say bookkeeping isn't just about the books. It's about stability. It's about keeping your financial life predictable enough so you can make big moves without fear of surprises like these. He learned the lesson the hard way, but he learned it. Now he has monthly bookkeeping in place. His books are reconciled. His CPA has access to the book, and there's open communication throughout the year. No more filing and panicking in September, and no more guessing. He knows where he stands every single month. That's peace of mind. When I think about this story, I don't think about what went wrong, really. I really think about all the pieces that were missing because everyone really did great work. Everyone was good at what they did. The CPA, our client as a lawyer, they just didn't have the system that connected all their worlds together. And I think that's what bookkeeping does for people. It bridges the silence. It gives the CPA real hard data, and it gives the business owner confidence. It turns that ghost town into a conversation. That's the part that people miss. Bookkeeping isn't about competing with accounting firms and CPA firms. It's about complementing their services. When we keep the numbers alive all year, the CPA can focus on strategy, planning, all the high-level work. Everybody wins. So if you're listening to this right now and you haven't heard from your CPA in months, not necessarily a bad thing. They're probably just doing what they do best. But ask yourself, who's keeping your books alive while they do that work? Because that's the place that makes everything run smoother for them and for you. The CPA ghost town isn't a failure. It's just a system waiting for someone to build the bridge that is bookkeeping. Thank you so much for listening to Confessions of a Bookkeeper.